Do you have a twin flame or a handler? Do you have a twin flame or a handler? Today, I want to talk about a topic that I've been thinking about covering for a while now. And I can't think of a better day to cover it than when the sun, which represents our consciousness, is in Libra, and the moon, which represents our emotions, is in Cancer, which just so happens to be transiting my 7th house of relationships. So, what does that mean exactly? It means that this is a topic I can talk about on an emotional level today. It appeals to my emotions. So, let's get into it. First of all, what is a twin flame? A twin flame is a phrase that's popular in the New Age communities. Twin flames are basically your other half, the other part of your soul, the one that Spirit made just for you. And a lot of people believe that a twin flame is literally your soul split in half. So it's literally you in another body. Now, there's other forms of relationships, like karmic relationships, which means people are in your life for a short period of time until you learn the lesson. And then there's soulmate relationships, which are pretty much mostly harmonious, and they may be with you for a while longer. But a lot of people get confused. It can feel confusing to know the difference between a karmic relationship and a twin flame, because they often mirror each other. And now we're starting to hear New Age communities talk about the false twin flame. So I'm going to cover all this and more. We're also going to look at it from a programming handle, as in MK Ultra programming, as in Monarch programming. And I hope you don't mind that I'm in the desert today. I'll also be doing a little exploration, so you can come explore with me while we're covering this topic. So anyways, back to the types of relationships we have. What is a twin flame versus a false twin or a karmic relationship, because they can often look the same. So twin flames, as I said earlier, are the other half of your soul, the one that Spirit made just for you, and maybe even the literal other half of you. But they also come with some very strong polarities, and they're often the relationship that wakes you up. So you'll usually meet a twin flame right before you're going through a major spiritual awakening, and a twin flame relationship is said to put you on the path. And twin flame relationships are also characterized by very strong waves of emotion. So you either have it really good with your twin or you have it really bad. But the more you're able to look within yourself while you're in these types of relationship, the easier time you're going to have if you remember that the relationship is about you. It's not what the partner is doing, it's what they're illuminating within you. Now, this can often mirror karmic relationships as well, because karmic relationships basically do the same thing, except they may not get you on your spiritual path so much so as a twin flame, and they may not mirror the intensity of a twin flame, according to spiritual teachers. But I would beg to differ with that. I think karmic relationships can have sometimes an even more powerful pull, because if you believe in reincarnation and that we've been on this cycle over and over again while we expand our souls and expand the lessons that we're learning here, then of course, why wouldn't we be drawn to those karmic relationships, especially if we run into them every lifetime? Now, they say you run into a twin flame every lifetime too, or I've also heard that the twin flame doesn't always incarnate with you. Sometimes the twin flame will be on Spirit's side if you choose to have a lifetime that's not so relationship focused. But as you can see, it can be hard to tell the difference. So, my question for you to ponder is, what is the difference? sorry, let's start over. What could reasons be for other entities, organizations, and people who like to control consciousness on the planet? What could their purpose be for pushing this narrative? Especially, there's a lot of rumors that the New World Order is also tied to New Age concepts like occultism. And I've heard directly from certain people's mouths, people who seem to know about these secret societies, how they're directly involved in New Age communities. And if you've ever been to a rave, or if you've heard any of my other videos, then you've probably heard me talk about how the flashing lights that you hear at raves, the subliminal messaging that they put in the images that they flash at you, and sound frequencies are also used in monarch programming. Monarch programming is an offset of MK Ultra. If you don't know what MK Ultra is, MK Ultra was a secret mind control project where secret agencies were doing mind control on unsuspecting citizens. They were doing things like slipping LSD in their drinks, watching them behind closed curtains, and basically it was an experiment of consciousness and behavior. So they stopped doing that. I believe it was in the 70s because it was unethical in a lot of ways. And a lot of people think that those experiments didn't stop. I have not heard a ton of other people talk about monarch programming, but you may have heard me talk about it on my channel several times. And that is because I feel blessed to have come across a book called The Illuminati Formula to Create an Undetectable Total Mind Controlled Slave by Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier. And that book opened my eyes to what programming is, how they're doing it on people, and how to know if you yourself are programmed. So I made several videos on that on my channel if you want to go more in depth on what monarch programming is and what handlers are. So short definition of what a handler is somebody used on monarch programming victims or in monarch programming to keep you on track. So if you're a targeted individual, and here are some quick signs to know you might be one, do you have a high IQ, 130 or higher? Are you or were you in the GATE program? Do you have family in military, intelligence agencies? What else? Were you pushed down an entertainment path? Secret societies, all of those things could be, and religious, of course, religious programming. All of that falls under the bracket of potential targeted individual. One of the reasons is because, according to this book, they could not do, it's getting loud over there with the cards, they could not do mind control on people with an IQ of less than 130, allegedly, okay? Now, I have my own personal theory that because a particular person named Michael Aquino was mentioned as a handler in this book, and he just so happened to have a high place in our military, and he just so happened to have a mother who was part of one of the first longest run gifted program studies, and he wrote a book from PSYOP to Mind War, and he had a high place in our government. So all of these things lead me to believe that he could have been part of an elite group or an organization that, took some ideas from monarch programming and used it on an entire generation, which is going to lead me to explain why the concept of twin flames or karmic relationships and relationships in general could be programming. So how will you know the difference? Well, when it comes to programming, we have to think back to how they program us, right? And when we're kids, it starts very young with movies like Disney movies, which all seem to push the narrative of finding the one. Okay? They may not call it a twin flame, but isn't that what a twin flame is? It's the one, the other half of your soul, the one that you want to be with, the one that completes you. Not to mention, as we get older, when we're teens, when we're adults, when we're young adults, when we have families of our own, Isn't society always pushing us to find the other half, to find the one? And how many times have you heard someone say, when you were in a toxic relationship or just got out of a relationship, like, don't worry, they just weren't the one? Only to find another one to repeat the same patterns with. And it kind of keeps you on this cycle of chasing a dangling carrot, this idea of finding the one. And it's almost like we're all wounded warriors in some way, because we've all been through the ringer. We all have relationship trauma. Relationships are the one thing here on earth that we can't avoid. They're going to bring up tough stuff that we don't always want to see. And we're also going to most likely experience some form of projecting in relationships, whether we are projecting our fears, our traumas, our beliefs, our things that we don't like about ourselves on other people, or whether we're going to experience someone projecting all of that on us. So back to the idea of programming and Disney movies. This is mentioned in monarch programming literature, and granted, this came out in the 90s, okay, so this is all alleged, but I just think it's interesting to use myself and my life experiences as an example, as somebody who grew up watching Disney movies. So we've got Ariel, whose voice was stolen by Ursula, who we can all say was abusive towards Ariel, right? Evil, casting spells on Ariel, wanting to take her voice because she was jealous. Then we have little Ariel, innocent Ariel, always singing, I wish I could be part of that world. So feeling different, feeling like an outsider already, right? And then her voice gets stolen. Someone who abused her stole her voice, literally. So the voice is the throat chakra, how we express ourselves, how we communicate truth. So already we've got this idea that people can take your voice away from you. And we have this idea implanted in us that we are an outsider. We're not part of that world, right? If we're different in some way. So then we have movies like Beauty and the Beast, where Belle is held captive by a beast. Beautiful Belle, the talk of the town. Everyone loves Belle, wants to be Belle. She's beautiful, kind, book smart, right? So many great things. And then she gets captured by a beast who is literally holding her hostage as his servant, and somehow by the end of the movie she falls in love with him and finds the beauty in the beast, right? Okay, so that's so crazy, because that is like Stockholm syndrome, and that reminds me personally of so many relationships that I've been with narcissistic and abusive men, and I thought it was my job to love them unconditionally. Like I was noble for doing this, right? I'm just doing them a favor for seeing something in them that not anyone would likely see, right? Then we have movies like Aladdin. Aladdin can't manifest things on his own, but he can with a genie. So again, something outside of yourself. And you know what a genie is? A genie is a jinn. A jinn is a demon. A demon that a lot of these secret societies or satanic groups or whatever literally summon these demon or these jinn because they don't believe or they don't know or they don't understand that they have the power within them to manifest and to create. So, but side note, should I go here? All right, I think I'm gonna go through the tunnel. Let's make sure we're safe. Okay, but side note, now I forget my side note. But anyways, Aladdin pretty much teaches you that you need something outside of you to manifest. And then we've got Jafar, which is the sorcerer, right? So that's also implanting those kind of ideas in our head too. So, and not to mention poverty mindset. Aladdin was poor, and then it also kind of paints this idea in our head that like, rich people are evil, right? Or whatever, I don't know. And then there might be some other messages that I missed, but my point is that already these are 3 of the most popular movies that we watched as kids that we thought was just entertainment. But in reality, it's shaping our young brains to absorb this information, and it's creating our own ideas of love, right? And this is reminding me of the movie, the Batman and Robin. I can't remember if it's Batman Forever. I think it's Batman Forever, actually, where Joker and the Two-Face are the villains in that. And Joker has this, not Joker, the Riddler and Two-Face are the villains in this. And the Riddler has this device that he puts on people's head, and they watch the TV or whatever, and this device like projects a hologram or whatever. It projects whatever is in their mind, almost like an algorithm, right? So it projects on the screen things that they would want to watch. So while they're busy watching these things that they're interested in, the Riddler and Two-Face and the evil people are stealing their brain power, literally sucking it up. And when we're children, until we're about 6 or 7, we're still in delta and theta and alpha brainwaves. I'm trying to remember, I think alpha might be from 7 to 12. But in all of those brainwave states, mostly delta and theta, we are so programmable. We are like a sponge. You're literally absorbing information from your environment to create your belief system and create your image of yourself and who you are. So then when you grow up, by the time you're 12, like it's pretty much cemented in there, your views on the world. And think of all the things that we watched that we grew up on. So by the time we're 12, we pretty much have an idea of what we expect love to be based on what we saw our parents do, what we saw society do, and what we saw in movies. Then we grow up as teens, as adults, being curious about love, being curious about sex, being given condoms and sex ed in school, often before we're even ready to have this conversation. And I get that, maybe it's for prevention of pregnancies and safe sex and all that. But it's also similar to the DARE program, kind of implanting some ideas in our mind that we as children may not have thought about. Now, granted, I know that some people also think about it way earlier and maybe lost their virginity at 12 and stuff. So it's different for everyone. And by the way, I don't think that's the normal experience. I think when we're that young, that usually signs of something else going on, some kind of abuse from elders or family or whatnot. Because children don't do adult things unless they've seen adult things, right? I remember reading some psychology literature when I was coming to terms with my own SA, okay? Hopefully you know that abbreviation, but my own experience with that kind of stuff. And I remember looking up this literature and seeing like, oh, it's normal for like kids to experiment on each other and do this kind of stuff. But as an adult, the more that I know about the programming and how a lot of these, according to Cisco Wheeler and Fritz Springmeier, a lot of these elite societies and secret organizations are already embedded into the military, the government, the medical system, so psychology, that would fall under that. And basically all the, the educational system, all the organizations that run the country. So basically if you're born in the 90s or the 80s like I am, then, this stuff has been going on literally our whole lives, okay? It's probably started long ago, possibly before the 40s and 50s, but definitely by the time that we had TVs and television programming, right? So anyways, my point was that this stuff is not normal for kids, but it is normalized because of what is being pushed on us. So I'm not trying to get political here at all, but I worry about the next generation because every time they see these new movies, we've got all these confusing things about gender and same sex, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're a kid who's not even ready to have intimate relationships and those ideas are already being implanted in your formative mind, that's when it starts to become questionable, to say the least. So I worry about this next generation because I'm watching kids these days get very confused because they grow up on their cell phones with an algorithm, and they are, a lot of them, there's a group of kids that thought that they were furries or dogs and animals, and they seem to be serious about this. And kids who are literally like 12, 13, 14 who are already identifying as different genders because they're either lost. And this is just what I've seen. I've just seen certain kids who often have abusive families or drunk parents who aren't around and there for them. So a lot of these kids are seeking to belong in some way, and the LGBTQ community is very accepting. And I don't want this to by any means sound like I don't, agree with that lifestyle or have many people that I love dearly and support dearly that came out years later. And of course, you want it to be easy for these people. So my only thing is like drawing the line between what we're showing the kids and trying to, understanding the difference between us as human beings that are literally here to awaken humanity, right? And part of that process of humanity awakening is recognizing the polarities that exist inside every one of us. So we all have masculine, we all have feminine traits. So the secret societies, though, of course, pervert everything. I don't know if that's the right word. They invert. Everything's an inversion, right? So they take something that, a lot of people are embodying in a healthy way. Like, I'm a woman, like, I love women. Like, who's to say, like, I wouldn't date one someday? I don't know, but I don't label myself as anything because I put it on like a person to person or an energetic basis. And while I can admire beauty, do I necessarily want to like be in a relationship with someone or like experiment in other ways with that? I don't know. So far, no. So probably not. But I'm just saying I can recognize, even as a person who is straight, I can understand why and how we all as humans have parts of us that may be attracted to the same sex, right? Or even at times want to identify as another gender. Like, for example, like when I was a kid, I remember when I was 7 years old, I only wanted to wear backwards hats and dress like a tomboy for the whole year, and I wanted to be like a boy. And then the next year, all I wanted to do was wear dresses. So there was an identity crisis as a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old. So what's crazy is how this conditioning, though, is just like everything wants to label something, right? So when we label something, whether that is gender, whether that is sexual orientation, whether that is relationships and what type of relationship, like twin flame, karmic twin, soulmate, Hamsler, we are providing a box for that, right? So now, because we've labeled something, we have created our own box for that thing. So that means because we are powerful creators and manifestors, we don't need a genie to manifest, although we can, but it's going to cost you something, probably a blood sacrifice. But we are powerful creators, and when we put our intentions out there in the world, we end up creating it, right? So if I say that somebody's my twin flame, and my concept of a twin flame is it's going to be bad and it's going to be good, but they're going to ultimately awaken me. But ultimately we can't be together because it's going to be too hard. But because he's my twin, he's the one that I'm going to be with. But there's something that's going to be so hard, for us to get over, whether he lives in another country far away, or he's got some kind of DRUGS problem that we can't overcome, or there's like an age gap that we can't overcome. If I start labeling the relationship I'm in with all of those parameters, then I'm creating that relationship. And because somebody else coined the term twin flame, we have to look at who originally coined that term and what motivation might someone have for us to put up with these types of relationship where there's obviously on some level some kind of toxicity and abuse, especially if we're having a hard time telling the difference between a twin flame and a karmic flame. So all of that to say, how many of us have stuck it out with a twin because we think that's just how relationships are? That's just what it means to be in a twin flame relationship. I know I have, and how many of us have also laid awake at night and wondered, am I with my twin? Or is he a karmic twin? Or is he a twin flame? And we've laid in bed in confusion. My other question about these types of relationships is how many of us have sacrificed our life path, our dreams, our goals to appease somebody. How many of us have been the Belle, have been the Ariel, have been the Aladdin, putting giving our power away to someone else, to something else, all to be loved. And oftentimes we need someone to love us externally because we do not feel it on the inside. If we did, this is a hard pill to swallow. If we did, we would not be putting up with half the stuff that we did. So I learned, all right, let's talk about my twin flame relationship, my twin flame, okay? I called it that. It was right at the beginning of my awakening, right before I had like a really big spiritual awakening. So sometime 2015, I think I met this person, and I had met them first, and then I think shortly after that, I had learned what the term twin flame meant. But right before I met him, I had actually started meditating, I started seeing angel numbers, and I started to want to get sober. So those are three things where I was putting in work of self-improvement. I was making personal changes in my life to be a better person. So when we do that, Spirit, God, the universe, because we're choosing to level up by giving up a habit, Spirit or God or whatever, it's going to put something or someone in your life. And one of the things that I had been wanting for so long and yearning for was a relationship, a true blue love relationship, someone that loved me back, because I had this habit of being very codependent with people, but also chasing men that did not want me. I had to convince myself, like I made up fantastical worlds about them. Like, oh, he's just not calling because he doesn't want to show his true feelings. He doesn't, he's not showing up for me because he's got trauma. I'm in the friends with benefits, secret type relationship because, I would lie to myself and act like I'm in it because I want to be free and I want to be single. But that couldn't be further from the case. Side note, a lot of us do that because of society and what we see other people doing, and because we want to be the cool girl or the cool guy, and we don't want to wear our heart on our sleeve. So that's another programming in itself. But anyways, back to my point, I called this person in not only because a strong and pure desire to meet somebody who I was more in alignment with, but also because I had done the personal work. I started meditating. That was hard. I started praying. That was not something I did regularly. I started to give up alcohol. Again, have you ever heard the phrase, like, if you want to evolve or go to the next level, you have to give something up? So that is what I was doing. So naturally, I met somebody. So then I met this person, and because I wasn't fully healed, I was only beginning that process, I would also attract the bad parts of that relationship. But in reality, what that relationship was showing me, it was showing me things that had not been brought to my conscious awareness yet. So in some way, it was mirroring the twin flame journey because it's bringing something to light, to consciousness. But part of the twin flame journey is what reels us back into these people after they've betrayed us in some way. So for example, in my particular circumstance, I did not know that this person I was seeing, I met them in NA, so of course, like, they had a history of abuse with substances, and I was in AA, so I had experience with alcohol, but they were sober when I met them, and I was sober, so like we were in alignment with being sober. But we got in a relationship, against the advice of 12-step programs, because they say work on yourself first. Don't 13-step people who are trying to get healthy, but it's something that happens naturally when people are getting sober. They just want to feel that love and connection. And it's easy to feel a connection with people when you are like sharing your soul with them in these meetings, right? So anyways, met him when he was sober, and then he relapsed, and I didn't know anything about substances and what that looked like. So I didn't know that he was secretly using the whole time and putting himself in like very, very horrible situations that I would not stuck around with had I known what was going on, and things that put me, my reproductive health and my mental health, all of that, my physical health at risk. Yet because I was coming across all this twin flame literature, and I was so stuck on this idea of like finding the one because society programmed that in me, because I didn't know how to build a life outside of a relationship, because my life wasn't full and complete. I wasn't doing my own hobbies that I loved. I was working a job that, I didn't like all that much, but it was paying the bills. I was probably doing a lot of things I didn't really want to be doing because I hadn't learned how to like create the life of my desires yet. And I was doing a lot of things I felt like I had to, which again, all falls back on programming. We're programmed to go to work, programmed to get a job, programmed to work hard because you gotta, if you want to survive, you gotta pay your bills. So sometimes you gotta do what you don't want to do. Sometimes you gotta go work at a coffee shop or be a waitress or work at a construction job or whatever, whatever you're doing because you have to do it, right? Because if I could choose, I would have been an artist and a freelancer and doing what I'm doing now, right? So anyways, coming across all that twin flame literature made me, in the unhealed parts of myself, led me to stay in that relationship, to play the twin flame dance game where I would, okay, he's off to rehab now. And then I would start noticing things like, oh, well, when I go to AA and I do things to work on myself, he gets better too. So when our relationship is God-centered, spirit-centered, self-development centered, the relationship gets better. But then all of a sudden it shifts at some point. We start putting each other back on the pedestal, back as the one. We stop doing the things that we did for self-care, aka going to meetings or praying or meditating, because now we have a physical person who can do all that stuff for us. So rather than getting up and going to a meeting, which makes me feel good spiritually, rather than getting up and meditating, which feels good spiritually, rather than getting up and reading a book, which feels good spiritually, I'm now waking up next to my partner like, oh, and now all my emotions are being jumbled around based on how they feel, based on their mood. And I'm sorry to say this, but I don't think humans are supposed to be with each other 24/7, because if you get into the human design and the auric field, we all have spaces in our aura that are prone to conditioning. And we are already telepathic. People don't know that. But if you get into human design, you'll see we're all telepathic already in some way, shape, or form. Some people can speak telepathically through the mind. Some people, so like we implant thoughts and ideas into other people. Some of us are clairaudient, so we can hear that stuff. Some of us are clairsentient, so we feel it. We get the gut feelings very strongly. Some of us have very strong intuition that speaks to us in a lot of different ways, or we're clairvoyant, so we have different clair senses. Everybody is psychic, but they'll never tell you that, because if they told us that, then we wouldn't stick around and play their little games and be so obsessed with chasing this dangling carrot of a perfect relationship. So I'm aware this might make me sound a little bitter, but I'm not at all. Ultimately, what I learned through the twin flame process is that because I had unhealed wounds that ironically he helped bring to the surface, I'm getting hot, but ironically, the person that hurt me the most was the greatest blessing, right? Because they brought those wounds to the surface. And it was only, in my experience, through losing them that I grew the most, because I had to dig deep and rely on myself and find the God within. Jesus says the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven is inside of you. Heaven and hell are here on earth. You are the kingdom of God. That's what I learned. Everything is inside of us. The outside world will reflect back what we feel on the inside. So ultimately that experience taught me that I'm the God that I was seeking. So the interesting thing about that is after I got out of that relationship, I spent a little time on my own. I continued going to meetings, getting sober, reading books, developing my psychic senses, meditating, learning how to remote view, reading tarot, all the things that were building my sixth senses, so to speak. I got involved in the community. I helped other sober people get sober. I sold healing crystal jewelry because I believed in the power of healing crystals. I do tarot readings, astrology, and human design. I was doing all that stuff because I believe that since it helped me so much, I want to share that with other people too. So I dove back into that stuff. And over the years, I kept meeting partners and I had a lot of relationships. Some of them lasted longer than others. But what I noticed is that when I was in this phase of, I have to find the one to complete me. You know, I'm 27, I'm 28, I'm 29, like I'm not married, so it's a problem that I'm still single. And again, societal programming and expectations, you know, because I feel like women, and probably men too, have this pressure of, well, you got to get pregnant by a certain age or else it's not in the cards for you, or you got to start a family by a certain age or it's not in the cards for you. And then there's a lot of us who are pained by our parents' divorces and, you know, might know better than to be seeking that stuff. So maybe we don't believe in marriage, but that doesn't stop people like that from wanting to connect in relationships. And a lot of us just end up using each other to fill the void. And then what I realized is that every time I had something unhealed, the partner that showed up was always a reflection of that. And I stopped believing, when I broke up with my twin flame, I kind of, after a couple years, stopped believing in that concept altogether. But then there was something at some point a couple years later that shifted in me that was like, you know what? I started listening to Abraham Hicks a lot and law of attraction type stuff. And I was like, no, I create my reality and I'm ready to find another love. So guess what happened? I met another twin flame. And I don't know if I'd call him a twin flame so much as like a karmic relationship. But again, I'm not huge on the labels because the themes mirrored in that relationship were very similar. It was very toxic at times, yet I'm so thankful for that person, even though it turned out to be a domestic violence type situation and I thought I was gonna die, DIE at one point. I'm thankful for that person because I became a completely different person when I got out of that relationship. I became strong Alex. I became Alex that traveled across the country in a SUV by herself with her dog. I saw the freaking country, guys, like all of this. I stopped putting men on a pedestal. I stopped feeling responsible for men with mommy issues. And I started giving that love all back to myself. And I got so happy, so peaceful, and started seeing a lot of my dreams come true. And then I think I had like a period of casual dating, which was also very intense. And ultimately, during that period of life, I realized that no matter what kind of relationship you're in, soulmate, karmic, twin flame, or just a relationship, if you don't want to call it any of the labels, every time we share our, let's call it intimate energy, sex energy with somebody else, they're taking a piece of us. So they're feeding on us. Your sacral energy center is your creative zone, and it's also your center of sexuality. So when you are having all these relationships with people, you ever wonder why you feel drained? How can things be going really well and then all of a sudden you meet somebody, you have amazing you know what, and then about 3 weeks later you are so drained, you're arguing, the honeymoon phase is over, and you're like, what the heck happened? I met them when I was at my peak, and now I feel like I've just been sucked dry by an energy vampire. And this happens to men, this happens to women, this happens to all of us. And a lot of what I ultimately learned about that, I keep forgetting it's louder over here, but what I ultimately learned about that is that sex is the strongest form of creation on the planet. It literally creates children. And that kind of energy also can create, the type of things that we want to manifest. So what's happening is that it's opening up a portal. So not only every time we mix energy with somebody, they're literally kind of they stay attached to our energy unless we're doing cord cutting rituals. And you can't just, in my experience, it's not as simple as okay, I'm going to sleep with whoever and then do a cord cutting ritual and what's done is done. It's not as simple as that seems. Those lasting effects of those types of relationship can linger with you, and the trauma or whatever will lift when it decides to lift. It's not always up to us. No matter how many times we may do some kind of ritual or take a saltwater bath, some of that energy stays with us, and it stays with us for a reason. Maybe it has to do with your astrology chart and your specific cycles. I know for me, a lot of times it did. There can be a lot of different reasons why though. And so anyway, we open portals with people and it creates new trauma. And think of it as if I'm choosing someone based on my physical attraction and not a spiritual connection. For a man, it's like planting your seed in a garden that hasn't been fertilized and it's really nasty and it's dry and barren, and you're expecting this beautiful thing to blossom, but it's not going to because you're not planting it in the right garden. And for women, it's like taking a seed that has mold on it, that is a GMO modified seed that's not even going to be the plant that you want to grow, and then you stick it in your womb and then get mad when it doesn't flower right. Okay, so that's what's happening. We're kind of trauma bonding with everybody, right? Until it comes to our awareness, until one way out of that is to, rather than be complaining to your next partner about what this last partner did for you and living in the toxic story, which is something I was guilty of. Every time I got out of a relationship, I would go into the new relationship and say, let's talk about our exes because I want to know who you are and how you deal with conflict. So I'm going to tell you all my trauma. I'm going to hear all of yours. And then a couple months later, we get in the relationship, and how come our trauma is mirroring back to each other? I'm like, and I thought you were the guy that was never going to do this to me. So why are you being just like them? And same thing, you know, they thought I wasn't going to be a crazy you know what. And then all of a sudden I'm mirroring what their exes did. So we're stuck in these traumatic trauma bond cycles. And that is because we're talking about it. We're entering a relationship with trauma. We're not healing that trauma first. It's still fresh in our mind, and it's a lot easier to go out to a bar the next day or like join a club the next day. And like, you know, the saying, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone. So we move on so quickly. And the best medicine, the best thing that will absolutely change your life, celibacy. And I know people don't want to hear that. But it literally, I used to cringe when my sponsor would tell me, stay celibate. And because I was surrounded by young, attractive men. And I was my friends all the time. I was meeting people all the time. I'm social. I felt good about myself. I wanted to share the love, okay? And I thought that, had that hippie mentality for a minute, like, I'm a free spirit, like, we're just sharing love. But I didn't realize that that's part of the programming. That's part of this new age hippie movement. That's part of this rave culture. That's part of this sex magic, that our energy, we're not even using it for us. So how do you know? There are sometimes are a literal handler. So the literal handler is entering your life to control your narrative, and they're controlling you through sex, and they're using your energy to do rituals so they can manifest, okay? Raise your hand if you've ever met a witch or a warlock. Raise your hand if they ever use their effing period BLOOD on you, okay? I'm gonna vomit, because people actually do that, and it's wrong on so many levels to do that without someone's consent. And that's what a lot of these secret societies are doing. There's even rumors that people were going to tampon dispensers and bathrooms to find those kind of sanitary products so they can use blood magic rituals, okay? That is dark and kind of gross. But there are literal people that do that. And all they need is your hair left behind at their apartment, and they can do these, like, literally call upon these demons. Okay, so that's an extreme case. It's likely that most people listening to this video aren't going to come across a warlock or a witch who's doing that kind of magic on you, but it's not impossible. So how might you know if you're with somebody like that? Well, did they love bomb you? Are they using NLP on you? NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. So they're going to mirror you. They're going to mirror your likes, your interests, your voice, your personality, love bomb you again. And you're going to feel energetically drained. It's just going to feel draining. So you have to be able to trust your intuition. That's why I teach ESP development, and why I teach and share tools like astrology and human design. You have to develop your intuition. This is the only way you're going to be able to spot these kind of people. And you can't rely on what somebody else says. You can't rely on programming. You're going to have to trust your gut on this. And that took me a while to do, but ultimately I did it. This video is getting long. I'm sorry. But anyways, you're going to want to trust your gut on that to figure out, you know, how to tell if that person is a handler or not. And if you need help with that, I do have a course on ESP development and remote viewing. You can find that in the link in this description. And I do one-on-one readings, which are super helpful. I'm not your traditional like sun sign astrology, natal chart astrology. I do teach that stuff, but like I focus on progress charts and transits and all that stuff because that is what's going on daily, and we're looking at the cycles you're going through currently. And sometimes we do eclipse readings, so we go back to the eclipse cycles, like what are you working on, what themes are you going to. I can do relationship readings, like that can be so helpful. Astrology is something that totally helped me break the cycle of relationships, and it helps me understand the karmic lessons, because our astrology chart is going to show our personal karma. Every person, every soul on earth was intentional about the exact time of birth, the time that you're born on this earth, because it sets up your cycle and how it's going to interact with the planetary energies that are all around us. Just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean that it's not at play behind us. Why do you think these secret societies do rituals on full moons, on new moons, on certain holidays, Feast of Trumpets, all this stuff? Like, this stuff is real and it matters. So it would behoove you to learn more about it and to definitely get comfortable with your personal chart and how to track some of this stuff. Speaking of tracking, I also made a moon calendar. That can be super helpful for learning your own personal cycles. I have one for October. It's still at the link in my description, so go ahead and check that out if you want to. The month is still not over yet, so you got time to track your cycles, and it shows you how to do that. So anyways, that could be another way to help you kind of discern what type of relationship you're in and or how to get out of it. And the biggest thing though is how we frame the relationships once we are done with them, okay? So if you walk around, first of all, labeling everything as a twin flame or karma, that's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's the most important thing to remember. Another important thing to remember is that the way you end a relationship is how you're going to start another one. So if you can't amicably end a relationship and say, you know what, I've enjoyed my time with you, maybe it's been a little intense, I still care about you, think you're a great person, gonna miss the you know what, but at the end of the day, I just don't think we're right for each other. I think we want different things. I wish you all the best. Versus, I'm gonna throw some crap at you, I'm gonna call the cops on you, I'm gonna go cheat on my friend because you hurt me and you bruised my ego. If you think that you're gonna leave a relationship like that and then go enter another one and you're not gonna be carrying over that trauma, you're the one that needs healing. That was me. I kept ending relationship after relationship thinking that I wasn't the problem, right? Okay, it was these a-holes. And so many guys were like that too. So like we were a vibrational match. So if you're with somebody who's immature emotionally, who's toxic, etc., look in the mirror. You're looking in the mirror already. And that can be a tough pill to swallow too. But if you can't develop a thick skin and realize if I'm not the problem, I'm not the solution, then it's going to be really hard for you to ever break out of these cycles. So we'll break out of these cycles when we can start finding peace with that person. And I've been through the ringer, okay? I've been through people who literally sacrificed me for a death magic ritual, okay? And somehow made peace with them. Not that I approve what they're doing. I don't talk to them. They're still blocked on everything. I don't care for them as a person, but I recognize that they were an important part of my journey. If anything, I should thank them the most because I didn't know about secret societies or demonic rituals or satanic agendas or mind control or monarch programming until I met that person. So again, everything serves a purpose. And when you recognize the purpose that it serves, that's when you'll be able to move on to your life. You either break free from the chain of relationship, from the chain of having to be with somebody. Do you recognize the freedom in that? To be comfortable and single, so much freedom. You're not dependent on someone else's cycle, on somebody else's emotions. Your emotions will not be determined by how somebody else's day is going. So that's the freedom in not needing a relationship. But if you decide you want one, you want to share your life with somebody, no shame in that. You will find that person when you come to peace with your last relationship and when you come to peace with yourself. And ultimately, when you can look yourself in the mirror and say, this is why I attracted that person. This is what I learned. This is what I will do differently next time. So all in all, I hope you've learned something from this video. I hope you've learned more about yourself. I hope you've learned the difference between twin flame, karmic flame, and handler and programming. But most importantly, how to break out of these relationships and stop them from controlling your life. So if you want to work with me one-on-one, I highly recommend astrology readings or human design readings, which will tell you about your auric field and your personal cycles. And I also recommend moon calendar if you want to track your personal cycle and personal emotions every day. That will be extremely helpful because it's something you do on the daily. It's a journal. I have journaling prompts for you to fill out on the daily. And yes, I will be coming out with a November one too. So right now, get the October one at the link in my description, and I'll be doing that every month. If you guys buy them. If you don't, then I'll just do them for myself. So let me know in the comments if you want me to keep making them because they are a lot of work for me. So yes. Anyways, and last but not least, the ESP development course. If you don't feel like working with me one-on-one, that's a little cheaper option for you to do some work on your own and learn a little bit about human design, how to look up your personal cycles in astrology and meditation, and teaches you a little bit about remote viewing. So all to develop your ESP consciousness so you don't have to be a victim of this programming or these cycles. So thanks for watching. Let me know if you like these outdoor videos too, and hopefully the sound quality is not bad. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one.